Okay, continuing right on from the previous video, I'll just go and delete all of this stuff. And let's take a look at these variables. So I'll do int my age, something like this. You can also do camel case, like that. Here we see this IntelliSense come up. This shows you what is available in the current context. So as you type, you will see functions and variables with that name come up. Then you can choose. I'll run that and you'll see that will print out. Okay, so again, this is the snake case, okay, where we have underscores that separate each word. And then here we have camel case. Now, for the most part, I'll be using camel case. There are some instances. So when we use constants, for example, that we'll talk about later, where this will change a bit. But for the most part, I'll be using camel case. Now, you might be tempted to do something like my @age. And immediately you'll see that you'll get squigglies over there. I'll just go and paste that in. So you can see that even though those are now the same, if I try and build and run this, you'll get errors. Okay, so these weird tokens you need to avoid. Control Z a few times. And so from now on, I'll just use that one and run, and that works. So by the way, I'm just double clicking on a word to select that entire word, then Control C to copy, and then Control V to paste over. So if you select this one, for example, Control C, double click on that one, Control V, that'll paste that right over the previous one. So that one, double click, Control C, double click over here, Control V to paste. Okay, so now we have this, and we basically have two of these age variables, and we are only currently using one. Okay, so if I remove the initialization part of that and run this, yeah, you'll see on line 6, here we have warning, my age, unreferenced local variable. Basically, we are not using this my age anywhere. Okay, so I can run that even when it's initialized. And even though it is initialized, we are not using it somewhere else. We are not printing it. We are not really doing anything with this at the moment. But we may not want to delete this, because of course we can simply select it and delete it, right? So it's kind of a silly example, but in some cases we want code to stick around. We don't want to delete it. We may want to use it as a reference when we write a new section of code, or we simply want to use it again at some point in the future. So what we can do is, instead of deleting it, we can comment it out. And so right at the front of this line here, so before int, I'll do double forward slash like that. And this here says that this line here now is a comment. So everything beyond this whole line will be a comment. So that is a single line comment. So comments are human or programmer readable notes or explanations in the code files. These are ignored by the compiler, so they do not really form part of your code or anything. You know, they won't be compiled into something that the computer understands. It is simply for us humans or programmers. Then you have single line comments like this, which will comment out the entire line, and multi-line comments. You often have comments like this at the top of the code file, where author information goes, so the author's name, the date, copyright information, and stuff like that. So you might see this when you work with other people's code. For the most part in our programs, we won't be doing this. Okay, a few notes on comments. If you write clear, concise code that is easy to follow or understand, then you won't have to write comments all that much. The code becomes self-documenting. In other words, it's so clear, you know, and easy to follow, so clear what's going on, that you won't have to write comments. So in other words, don't over comment or comment the obvious. right? So again, if your code is obvious and easy to follow, then you won't need to write comments. Also, don't do versioning in your comments. I talked previously about right at the top of the code document, you can have author information, you can have the date and stuff like that, right in that comment section right at the top. Now, often you'll find that people do versioning in that section, but I'd recommend against that. Use version control instead, such as Git, for example. Now, we'll probably talk about Git eventually, but that is basically a version control platform or system. Then you need to make sure to keep comments up to date. So when you make changes to code, for example, so your code, someone else's code, check the comments to make sure that they are still accurate. So if you change some functionality, maybe of a function or something, again, make sure that when somebody else comes along, because you'll often be working in teams. So even if you work by yourself, make sure that you practice comments. Commenting is very important and can be almost as difficult to get correct as it is to write some section of functionality. So you need to practice that and make sure that stuff is up to date. Because if the next guy comes along, he'll want proper up-to-date comments to try and figure out like what's going on in your code. Again, what you'll see is that right at the top of the file, often people will go like this, more or less. They'll write a block like this and do something like this, or write the CPP by some guy, and then you have copyright and various other things in here. You can also, instead of doing it like this, you can do multi-line comments. Which starts with this / like this, and an asterisk, okay? And then you open it up like this, and then you can do an asterisk in here, press enter, do another asterisk maybe, stuff like that. Paste that in there. You can do more of those, like this. Now with the multi-line comment, again, it'll start with that / and then an asterisk. It'll end with an asterisk and then for another /. So the asterisk will go inside. Okay. Right. So you can also comment things out. So here we are not really using this variable, my age, with the underscore. So I'll just comment it out like that. Control F5 to run this, and you'll see that this works. Now I would like to mention, if you take this here, this variable, paste it in here and try and run this, you'll see you have errors. My age undeclared identifier right here where we print it out. That is because the compiler will completely ignore this line. So in other words, this does not exist. Remove those comments and then that will change again. You also have multi-line comments, as we've seen at the top here. So I can comment all of this stuff out, doing that / and an asterisk. I'll just delete those, come down here, do an asterisk and a /. Now all of this stuff will be commented out. So we won't print anything to the screen here, and I'll just close that off. I just want to clear this stuff out, and I want to talk about the task list.